First, they experimented with bizarre designs. Then they built Europe's best light tanks. Now their legacy lives on across 3 continents. Starting as a newborn nation with 0 tanks, Czechoslovakia pulled off one of history's most impressive armored evolutions. Witness the complete transformation. Starting off with the interwar period, Czechoslovakia's journey into armored warfare began with one of the strangest machines ever conceived. Kolohusenka, 1924. This bizarre contraption looked like a child's drawing brought to life, featuring a wheel-track hybrid system that could switch between modes. Designed by engineer Josef Vollmer, it represented Czechoslovakia's first serious attempt at creating an armored fighting vehicle. The design was utterly impractical, but it taught Czech engineers the fundamentals of tracked vehicle construction and launched an industry that would change the world. Up next, the KH-50, KH-60, and KH-70 prototypes, 1924 to 1927. These experimental vehicles continued the learning process, testing different suspension systems and armor configurations. None reached production, but each iteration brought Czech designers closer to a viable combat tank. Then, the Mu-4 Tanket, 1932. This tiny machine gun carrier was basically a steel box on tracks. It proved too small and vulnerable for serious combat, but manufacturers KD and Skoda were rapidly mastering the mechanical challenges of armored vehicle production. Next up, the LTVZ-34 P2 light tank, 1933 to 1935. After nearly a decade of failed experiments, Czechoslovakia finally achieved its goal. This CKD-designed light tank became the nation's first production armored vehicle, ending the long quest for a combat-ready design. Only about 50 were built, but it established the technical foundation for everything that followed. Now, this is the LTVZ-35 light tank, 1935 to 1937. Armed with a 37mm gun and featuring a reliable suspension, this became the backbone of the Czechoslovak army. A total of 298 were produced, and the design proved so successful that Romania purchased a licensed version. When Germany occupied Czechoslovakia in 1939, these tanks were pressed into Wehrmacht service, fighting across Poland and the Eastern Front throughout World War II. Continuing, the LTVZ-38 TNHBS light tank, 1938. This was Czechoslovakia's masterpiece and arguably the best light tank in the world when World War II began. Featuring excellent armor, a powerful 37mm gun, and outstanding reliability, it was faster and more dependable than comparable British or Soviet designs. When Germany seized Czech factories, they immediately continued production, building over 1,400 as the Panzer 38T. Sweden even purchased a licensed version, the SDRVM-41, proving its international reputation for quality. The next one, the STVZ-39 and T-21 medium tank prototypes, 1938 to 1939. Czechoslovakia began developing a medium tank with a 47mm gun to complement its light tank force. The design was sold to Hungary, becoming the Turan I medium tank. The German occupation canceled Czech production before it could begin, but the engineering work demonstrated Czechoslovakia's capability to compete with major powers. Let's move on to the German occupation and World War II. Czech tank factories continued operating under Nazi control, producing thousands of vehicles that would fight across Europe. The Panzer 38T, under German production, 1939 to 1942. Germany recognized the LTVZ-38's excellence immediately and continued manufacturing it as a frontline combat tank. With over 1,400 produced, it formed the backbone of early panzer divisions during the invasions of Poland, France, and the Soviet Union. German commanders praised its reliability, which far exceeded their own Panzer I and II designs. Up next, the Marder III tank destroyer series, 1942 to 1944. When the Panzer 38T became outclassed as a gun tank, Germany converted the chassis into a tank destroyer mounting captured Soviet 76.2mm guns and later German 75mm anti-tank guns. It became the most produced German tank destroyer of the war, with thousands serving on all fronts. Now, this is the Hetzer, officially designated Jagdpanzer 38T, 1944 to 1945. This low-profile tank destroyer mounted a powerful 75mm gun in a fully enclosed casemate. With sloped armor and a tiny silhouette, it was highly survivable and devastatingly effective. Germany produced over 2,800 before war's end. The design proved so successful that Czechoslovakia, Switzerland, and other nations continued using Hetzers into the 1970s, making it one of the longest-serving armored vehicles in history. Following this, the Grill self-propelled gun, 1943 to 1944. The 38T chassis received a 15 cm heavy infantry howitzer, creating a mobile artillery platform. Though only about 200 were built, it demonstrated the remarkable adaptability of the Czech design chassis. The next one, the Flak Panzer 38T anti-aircraft variant, 1943 to 1945. Mounting a 20mm automatic cannon, this converted tank hunter became a tank hunter's hunter, engaging low-flying aircraft. It was the defensive response to Allied air superiority. Then, the SDI tank destroyer prototype, 1944 to 1945. Czech resistance engineers secretly designed this assault gun, mounting a 75mm gun in a low superstructure, similar to the German Stu-G 3. Liberation came before completion, but the plan survived for post-war evaluation. Continuing with the post-war and early Cold War era, 1945 to 1955. Continue watching to see the Warsaw Pact era and modern Czech tanks. Czechoslovakia emerged from World War II with its industrial base intact, but its political independence rapidly disappearing into the Soviet sphere. The TVP-VDU Kalahusenko wheeled tank experiments, 1946 to 1948. In a strange echo of the 1920s, Czech engineers briefly revived the wheel track concept for a fast reconnaissance vehicle. The Cold War made such unconventional designs impractical, and the project died quietly. Up next, captured Hetzer tank destroyers in Czech service, 1945-1950s. In an ironic twist, the reborn Czechoslovak army pressed captured German Hetzers back into service. These vehicles, built in Czech factories under occupation, now defended Czech borders against potential German resurgence. Next, the T-34-85 under license production, beginning 1951. The Soviet Union demanded Czechoslovakia manufacture the T-34-85 medium tank to rebuild Warsaw Pact forces. Czech factories produced hundreds, marking the beginning of Soviet design dominance. The legendary Soviet tank became the backbone of the early Cold War Czech army. Now, this is the Škoda T-50 medium tank prototype, 1949 to 1950. This represented Czechoslovakia's last attempt at independent tank design. Weighing 37 tons and armed with a powerful 100mm gun, the T-50 featured excellent armor and a sophisticated fire control system. It was genuinely competitive with contemporary Soviet designs. Stalin personally ordered the project cancelled, forcing Czechoslovakia to abandon indigenous development in favor of Soviet standardization. The prototype was scrapped, and Czech tank design died with it. The next one, the KD-T-51 prototype, 1949 to 1950. This competing indigenous design from KD featured a different hull layout and suspension system. It was merged with the Škoda design into the combined T-50/51 project before Soviet intervention killed both. Then, the T-50/51 Combined Development Project, 1950 to 1951. Škoda and KD unified their efforts into a single national medium tank program. The consolidated design showed tremendous promise with superior firepower and mobility compared to the T-34-85. Political pressure from Moscow ended the dream, forcing Czech engineers to abandon creativity for conformity. Following this, the T-25 medium tank project revival, 1948. Wartime Czech engineers had drafted plans for an indigenous medium tank in 1942 to 1943. After liberation, these blueprints were briefly reconsidered as a foundation for post-war development before being shelved permanently in favor of Soviet designs. Up next, the Panzerspawagen II Ausführung Škoda light tank, 1944 to 1945 German order, capture plans. Germany had ordered Skoda to develop a new light tank to replace the Panzer II. Only blueprints existed when the war ended, but they influenced post-war Czech thinking on light armored vehicles. Next, the SD-100 self-propelled gun prototype, 1951 to 1954. Czech engineers designed this tracked chassis mounting a powerful 100mm artillery piece for mobile fire support. It represented one of the last indigenous artillery projects before full Soviet integration. Continuing, the OT-810 Armored Personnel Carrier, 1955 to 1963. This domestically produced vehicle was essentially a modernized version of the captured German KFC 251 half-track. Thousands were built, equipping motorized rifle units throughout the Warsaw Pact. It kept Czech factories producing while transitioning to Soviet designs. The next one, the M53-59 Praga self-propelled anti-aircraft gun, 1953 to 1959. Mounting twin 30mm automatic cannons on a modified Praga V3S truck chassis. This unique Czech design provided mobile air defense. It proved highly effective and was widely exported to Soviet client states across 3 continents, becoming one of Czechoslovakia's most successful military exports. Then, the PT-76 amphibious light tank under license production, 1954. The Soviet Union's swimming tank entered Czech production to equip reconnaissance battalions. Its 76.2mm gun and amphibious capability made it perfect for river crossings in Central Europe's water-heavy terrain. Following this, early T-54 preparation and license production begins, late 1950s. As the 1950s progressed, Czechoslovakia began tooling factories to produce the Soviet T-54 main battle tank. This 100mm gun-armed vehicle would become the foundation of Czech armored forces for 3 decades. Full-scale production launched in 1957, marking complete transition to Soviet designs. Up next, the Warsaw Pact era. Czechoslovakia became one of the Soviet Union's primary tank manufacturers, producing thousands of vehicles that equipped armies from Africa to Asia. The T-54-55 main battle tank family under license production, 1957 to 1983. Armed with a powerful 100mm rifled gun and featuring thick sloped armor, the T-54-55 became Czechoslovakia's primary production vehicle. Czech factories built thousands over nearly 3 decades, exporting them to dozens of countries including Egypt, Syria, Iraq, and Libya. This legendary Soviet design formed the backbone of Warsaw Pact armored divisions throughout the Cold War, and Czech-built examples fought in every major Middle Eastern conflict. Up next, the OT-62 Topus Armored Personnel Carrier, 1963 to 1971. This joint Czechoslovak-Polish development modified the Soviet BTR-50P into a more capable amphibious troop carrier. The Topus featured improved armor and a diesel engine, making it well-suited for Central European operations. Next, the OT-64 SKOD-8 by 8-wheeled armored personnel carrier, 1963 to 1971. This joint Czech-Polish design created a wheeled alternative to tracked APCs. With 8-wheel drive and amphibious capability, the SKOD proved popular for internal security and motorized infantry units. Thousands were produced, serving throughout the Warsaw Pact. The next one, the OT-65 Vidra reconnaissance vehicle, 1960s. Nicknamed Otter in Czech, this small amphibious scout vehicle was a machine on steroids for swimming. It filled the light reconnaissance role in mechanized units with its speed and water-crossing capability. Then, the T-72 main battle tank under license production, beginning 1970s. The revolutionary Soviet design featured a 125mm smoothbore gun, composite armor, and an automatic loader. Czech factories produced thousands throughout the 1970s and 1980s, replacing older T-54-55 models. It represented a generational leap in firepower and protection. Following this, the BVP-1 infantry fighting vehicle, produced as BVP-1, 1970s to 1980s. Based on the Soviet BMP-1, This revolutionary vehicle mounted a 73mm gun and at 3 Sagar anti-tank missiles, allowing infantry to fight from inside. Czech production equipped motorized rifle regiments throughout the Warsaw Pact with mobile firepower. Now, this is the Dana VZ-77 self-propelled howitzer, 1977 to 1988. Mounting a 152mm howitzer on a Tatra 8x8 wheeled truck chassis. This unique Czech design created one of the world's first wheeled self-propelled guns. The Dana's mobility on roads far exceeded tracked artillery, allowing rapid repositioning. Its shoot-and-scoot capability made it highly survivable. The Dana remains in service with multiple armies today, exported to Poland, Libya, Georgia, and others, making it one of Czechoslovakia's most successful indigenous post-war designs. Up next, the SHGH VZ-77 self-propelled howitzer, 1970s to 1980s. This was the Czech-produced version of the Soviet Tu-S1 Gvozdika, mounting a 122mm howitzer on a tracked chassis. It provided mobile artillery support for mechanized divisions alongside the wheeled Dana. The next one, the BVP-2 Infantry Fighting Vehicle, 1980s. Upgrading from the BVP-1, this version featured a 30mm automatic cannon and improved AT-5 spandrel missiles. The increased firepower made it deadly against light armor and helicopters. Then, the T-72M and T-72M1 export variants, 1980s. Czechoslovakia produced downgraded export versions of the T-72 for sale to Soviet client states throughout the Middle East and Africa. These featured simpler fire control systems and reduced armor protection compared to Warsaw Pact versions. And our last category is the modern era. Following the Velvet Revolution in 1989 and the peaceful split into the Czech Republic and Slovakia in 1993, both nations faced the challenge of modernizing Soviet-era equipment while transitioning toward NATO membership. The T-72M4CZ Modernization Program, 1990s to 2000s. Czech engineers developed a comprehensive upgrade package for aging T-72s, including new fire control systems, explosive reactive armor, and improved engines. This modernization brought Cold War-era tanks up to near NATO standards at a fraction of the cost of new vehicles. Up next, the BVP-2 Modernization Program, 1990s to 2000s. Existing infantry fighting vehicles received upgraded electronics, improved sights, and NATO-compatible communications equipment. The modifications extended service life while ensuring interoperability with Western allies. Next, the Panzer II 8x8 wheeled armored personnel carrier, 2000s present. This joint Austrian-Czech project created a modern modular wheeled vehicle platform. With mine protection, air conditioning, and multiple weapon configurations, the Panzer II represents contemporary armored vehicle design. It has been exported to Portugal, Indonesia, and other nations, continuing Czech tradition of successful exports. The next one, the VTO and LOV Indigenous Infantry Fighting Vehicle Prototypes, 2000s. Czech industry attempted to develop a domestically designed IFV to replace Soviet-era BVP vehicles. Budget constraints and the small size of Czech armed forces made production economically unviable, and the projects remained prototypes. Then, the T-72M4CZ Excalibur Upgrade Package, 2010s. A further modernization added explosive reactive armor blocks, thermal sights, and digital fire control. Several export customers purchased the Excalibur upgrade for their T-72 fleets, generating revenue for Czech defense industry. Following this, Panzer II 8x8CZ specialized variants, 2010s. Czech forces fielded multiple weapon configurations including 30mm cannon-armed versions, mortar carriers, and command vehicles. The modularity allowed rapid roll changes using the same chassis. Up next, the BVP M2 SKCZ modernization, 2010s. This Slovak-Czech joint upgrade program for BMP. Two vehicles included new turrets, improved armor, and modern electronics. It represented continued cooperation between the two successor states. The next one, T-72M4CZ Final Operational Variants, 2020s. The last Czech-operated T-72s continue serving in gradually diminishing numbers. As NATO integration deepens, these Soviet-era designs are being phased out in favor of Western equipment, marking the end of an era. Leopard 2A4 and Leopard 2A7 Plus adoption, 2022 present. After 80 years of indigenous tank production and modification, the Czech and Slovak armies now operate German Leopard 2 main battle tanks. The era of domestic Czech tank development has ended, but the engineering legacy lives on in export modifications and armored vehicle designs worldwide.